Today we're covering this entire basement before someone falls in. Using a slab system you don't see every day. A ribbed concrete floor slab system with EPS. Let's jump straight into the build. We start by placing the first 2 rib beams onto the pillar. These 2 beams will work as our reference point, so everything will be placed from here. Then we mark where the edge of the stair opening will be, so we know where to start laying the full rib beams. At the edges of the staircase opening, we install double rib beams, because this is where the highest loads are concentrated, making sure they sit at least 10 centimeters on the wall and leave a minimum 4 centimeter gap at the outside edge. As we install the remaining rib beams, we use 2 EPS blocks at the ends. This keeps the spacing correct and the ribs aligned. With all the main rib beams in place, we move on to the next stage. We start by cutting OSB boards to size. These shape the stair opening, creating a solid concrete ring and supporting the rib beams at the edge. This board is quite thin for the amount of concrete pressure it will take, so we reinforce it with 2 5x10 timber pieces along both edges. And because the formwork is fairly wide, edge support alone isn't enough. That's why we add additional 5x10 timber battens to stiffen it further. We also add another 5x10 piece across the center of the formwork. It might be overbuilt, but with concrete, stronger is always better. With the formwork ready, we move down to the basement to install it in place and set all the supports for the rib beams before installing the EPS blocks. With the walls almost 3 meters high, we use portable scaffolding to work effectively. Then we bring down the pre-made formwork. From there, we measure the required length for the support posts. For these supports, we use 15x15 timber and cut it to size with a miter saw. This gives us straight, accurate cuts, so the posts sit flat and fully support the beams. With the first support post cut, we can set the formwork in place. First, we set the support posts roughly in position, slightly angled. Then we lift the formwork onto the posts. Once it's in place, we plumb the posts. This wedges the formwork tightly against the rib beams so it can't move easily. With the formwork locked in place, we can install the missing rib beam. This is where we really see how stable the formwork is, as I need to step onto it to position the beam. Since the stair opening is L-shaped, we repeat the same process on the other edge. Then we can finally install the last rib beam. Now we install the remaining supports under the rib beams. They're arranged in 2 rows, exactly where the distribution ribs are formed. These supports serve 2 purposes. First, they support the rib beams above, and by fixing 15x5 timber on top, they also form the formwork for the distribution ribs. This creates continuous concrete ribs running across the slab, between the EPS blocks. These distribution ribs tie the rib beams together, spread the loads, and make the whole slab much stiffer. With all the supports in place, the final step is adding 5x5 diagonal braces. They lock all the supports together and stop sideways movement. That's critical before we walk on the slab, because we want 0 movement from the supports below. With all the supports locked in place, the work below is done, and we can finally move back to working from the top. Before we start laying the blocks, we oil all the formwork that will be in contact with concrete. This prevents the concrete from bonding to the boards. Once everything sets, removing the formwork is much easier, especially overhead. It's a small step now that saves a lot of effort later. Once everything is oiled, we start laying the EPS blocks. First, we mark 3 centimeters in from the inside edge of the wall. This helps us know exactly where the block edge needs to be. We overhang the blocks slightly onto the wall so they sit on a solid surface. This stops them from lifting or sliding when we pour, and we start laying the blocks from the slab edge where full blocks fit. That way we can measure from here and know exactly what block sizes we'll need later on. Now we cut the EPS blocks to fit around the stair opening. We're using a hot wire cutter for clean cuts and no mess. The blocks were stored outside so they take a bit longer to cut, and there are quite a lot of cuts here. Once the stair opening is sorted, we can start making big progress again, row by row. Here we leave a 12 centimeter gap across the slab. This is where the distribution rib goes. This empty space will be fully filled with concrete to tie all the rib beams together. You might be wondering how we got to this slab stage, and some earlier stages were only filmed in short form. From here on, I'm showing every step of the build. This won't be an ordinary build, so hit subscribe if you want to see where this build takes us. With all the main blocks in place, we're left with just two edges. These only need half blocks. One side sits on the rib, the other on the wall edge. Most of them are made from leftover cuts, since we already have quite a few. The last thing before moving to the next stage is sealing all the perimeter blocks and locking them in place. We use expanding foam to bond the blocks to the wall. This stops them from shifting out of position and seals any gaps, so concrete has no chance to escape underneath. Now we can reinforce the slab with additional rebar. First, we place two 12mm rebars through the distribution ribs. Concrete alone isn't enough here because this area works in tension, so these rebars tie all the rib beams together and help the slab work as one solid structure. To lock everything in place, we tie the rebars to the rib beams with steel wire. One bar runs at the bottom, the other at the top. This keeps the steel exactly where it needs to be during the pour. More importantly, it locks all the rib beams together, so the slab works as one structure and controls cracking under load. Now we reinforce the stair opening, where extra strength is needed. Around the opening, we install 6 16mm rebars. This area has less support, so these bars carry the load around the opening and reduce the risk of cracking. Next, we reinforce the outside edges of the slab by drilling holes into the top of the existing wall. The hole diameter matches the rebar, so the bars fit tight without any additional anchoring. These rebars help bond the slab to the existing walls and keep the correct spacing for the horizontal rebars. Once the vertical rebars are in place, we add 4 horizontal rebars around the entire perimeter. We tie them into the rib beams and the vertical rebars, creating a continuous ring beam around the slab. At the corners, we add corner rebars to tie everything together. They keep the ring beam continuous through the corners and help transfer loads properly. Once all reinforcement is done, we can finally move on to building the formwork around the perimeter. First, we prep the boards for the formwork. We're using OSB. It's strong, easy to work with, and more than enough for this pour. We don't need much height here, so one full sheet gets cut into 3 strips. We use a track saw to keep it dead straight, because this top edge sets the final concrete level. Whatever happens here, the slab will follow. Then we oil all the boards. As you might remember, we always oil the parts that come off after the pour so they don't stick. Once the prep is done, we start installing the formwork. First, we set the OSB board to the height we need. To hold that height, we fix it temporarily to a 5x5 timber. At this stage, we only use regular wood screws just to lock the height quickly. Once the board is set to height and perfectly level, we fix it properly. We drill through the OSB straight into the concrete with a hammer drill. Then we take another 5x5 timber, slide a concrete anchor through it, and drive it into the drilled hole. This locks the board solidly in place at the correct height. We repeat the same process all the way around the perimeter, fixing everything to one consistent height. The concrete here will only be about 5 centimeters above the EPS blocks, so getting this formwork height right is critical. In a ribbed slab like this, that thin top layer sets the final slab level. If it's too low, the concrete cover is too thin. If it's too high, the slab level is off. Once all the main boards are in place, we've got 4 custom cuts to make. With those cuts in place, the perimeter formwork is now complete and level. Now we start adding all the extra 5x5 supports just to make sure this formwork doesn't move anywhere. Once the concrete starts pouring, the pressure builds fast, especially along the edges. These supports take that load and keep the board straight, so the height and line we set don't shift during the pour. With the perimeter done, we can move on to forming the stair opening edges. Most of the work is more straightforward here because we can fix the boards directly to the formwork underneath. That lets us position them without constant adjustment while still keeping everything at the same height as the rest of the formwork. This is my personal project, and client jobs always come first. Because of that, progress here comes in stages, but we'll show the entire build step by step. Now let's focus on finishing the slab. Once the stair opening is fully reinforced, we can install the top wire mesh. The mesh looks thin, but this system is designed and approved to work this way, so we stick to the design. We lay the mesh across the slab and overlap each sheet by one full mesh square, so everything locks together and works as one continuous reinforcement across the entire slab. With all the mesh in place, we tie it together with steel wire, locking everything into one reinforcement layer. Once that's done, we lift the mesh about 2 centimeters off the blocks using rebar chairs, so it sits in the correct position inside the concrete. And we're almost ready for the pour. I just want to make sure the outside edge really stays put. First, I fix a 10x5 timber across the middle of the vertical 5x5 supports. This ties all the formwork together, so it works as one solid structure, not separate pieces. From there, I add a diagonal plank. One end is fixed to the 10x5. The other end runs down into the ground. To support it properly, I drive a wooden peg into the ground at the end of the plank. That way, the concrete pressure gets transferred straight into the ground, and the formwork can't move during the pour. With that done, we're ready to pour the concrete. For this slab, we're using a pump truck. Right after that, a second concrete truck pulls in and unloads straight into the pump hopper. Because the site sits on a slope, we have to use a long-reach pump truck. There's no safe way to bring concrete in any other way. Before we can start pouring, we run a lubricating mix through the pump. Once the lubricating mix is through, we can finally start the pour, covering the slab and locking in all the work underneath. This concrete is fairly wet. That helps it flow easily between the ribs and around the reinforcement. It fills everything properly without needing to force it into place. Once a section of the slab is covered, we follow through with the vibrator. This helps the concrete settle properly, removes trapped air, and makes sure it fully surrounds the reinforcement and ribs. Bit by bit, the whole slab gets covered, and then we're left with leveling the top. For this, we use a long, straight piece of timber and pull it across the formwork. Since the formwork is all set to one level, it acts as a height guide, so screeding is pretty straightforward. Only one problem. We forgot to bring a smaller screed board, so now we're screeding with this huge 10x20 timber beam. And with that, the concrete slab is finished. We'll let it cure for a bit before we can see the final result. After giving the concrete enough time to cure, we can finally start removing the formwork. We start by removing the edge formwork first, to see how the edges hold and how the slab comes together. This is always the moment of truth. You see if all the prep, bracing, and leveling really paid off. If the formwork stayed put and the levels were right, it shows immediately. The edges come out clean, the height is consistent, and everything stays exactly where we set it. Next, we head down into the basement to check that everything stayed exactly as we left it. At the same time, we start removing the supports. Bit by bit, the space starts to open up. We'll have a lot of these 15x15 timbers left from the supports. Any ideas what we should build with them? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This slab stage unlocks the next major steps of the build, so stick around to see how it all comes together.